Wondering why Bitcoin won't have a bull run in 2019? Tune in to find out.
Good afternoon, parts of the world. Good morning. Taking a look here at Bitcoin. Wanted to provide you guys some value on the call here today. Doing this completely free for you. Nothing to gain other than to give you guys some knowledge on the call. So wanted to go ahead here and cover Bitcoin, cover it in the long-term scheme of things. A lot of people believe that we're going to be going to 34K, 15K, and 12K. I'm going to show you guys why, probability-wise, more than likely that is to not happen. And show you guys a little bit of Bitcoin in its current price action on the chart. So the local low for Bitcoin is roughly about $100 or so on Coinbase. We have more data displayed on Bitstamp and Brave New Coin, but to give you guys an interest of why I do believe prices to go lower before it goes much higher, is we created the lows here at $100. From $100 up to 20K, we're looking at about 20% gain. Let me go ahead here and zoom in a little bit further on the charts. With that, as you guys know, we created a lot of euphoria on the charts. Price was created up here. A lot of people bought into the top, or slowly been buying as price has been going down. What we're seeing here on price action wise is we're looking at a coin or an asset where there's not a lot of flux of capital coming in here, similar to being seen like the stock market, where there's a lot of pumping in price. As you can see, as the stock market is continuously extended, it almost looks like Bitcoin before the drop in the major decline in price. So the best way to reference Bitcoin is like a stair-step mechanism going up in price 40, 50 flights in the air on a skyscraper. The second we lose the top of that skyscraper, price then comes back down, price retraces, market cycles. If you've been in the market, if you've been in other traditional assets, if you looked at penny stocks, if you looked at silver as a reference, if you looked at Amazon, we tend to see price create itself a lot of retracements with that. So taking a look at it here, logically wise, we had our influx of buyers come in the market, whether or not you want to call that the institutional money, or they took an opportunity to make a lot of gains and then they took the price right back down. What we have to keep in mind, why I do not believe price will go above 5,500, and this is just simply logic from my understanding. Take a look at the weekly chart. We have roughly here about 5.5K, I would say. This zone, a lot of people believe to be the bottom. This is where the internet was, going very crazy over. Roughly here, 5.5 to 6, 6.3, and so forth. Consistently off this level here, we've been creating lower highs. Coming down to the weekly chart, the second we lost 20K and we came down here, broke support, became resistance, retest, failure to break above and continue higher. We trap people high here at 20K. We trap people high here at 18K. Break of support, continue lower. People could break even here potentially, and then trap people all into this range, come back down, support, trap people high again into this range, support, trap people, trap people, trap people. We're looking at an influx in a market where there's not a lot of liquidity being pumped in. When that happens, you're looking at retail versus the big players, the exchanges, the market makers, the George Soroses, the people that we don't even necessarily know, Satoshi Nakamoto as one. Is that going to be an actual person, or is that satire? Is that an entity? Is that an agency of some sort? Are there only 5, 10, 20 players that control all of the supply? And they really, if they control all of the supply, they can continuously sell the market off and make money on the way back down. So when price is up 20,000%, it's not surprising at all that price is coming back down. I've seen this consistently throughout penny stocks, throughout other assets, silver being a great reference. What tends to happen, what we're going to want to see in 2019, 2020, is we're going to want to see price go sideways. Do I believe this to be the low? I think we are to go much lower. It sounds crazy, I know. 12K, I was called crazy. 14, I was called crazy. 8, 10, every which way as we went back up. What you guys have to keep in mind, you have two people on each side of the fence, right? You have people like the tech people. You have retail people, which are just average people, buying money to make money. And what created the constant amount of just bouncing, and we just didn't go straight down like a penny stock. It's the belief of the euphoria subconsciously of price to go higher. And what people did, they definitely made money if you bought low, sell high in these scenarios. We have to keep in mind to break above 5.5, just to give you guys the scenario and why I think probability wise it's less likely, is at 5.5. We have people here taking long positions. We have people even trapped in the middle of the range here a lot as well. And the second price comes back up into this region, that is when people are going to probably slap their hands together and sell out of Bitcoin. And as that happens, we'll have people re-add on short positions. So people will be sitting here saying, okay, if price comes up 40, what is it, 45%, 70%, 60%, whatever the number is, that is going to present a very good opportunity to sell the market back down. In addition to that, people bought long here, maybe all the shorters in the market, if they determine that this is the bottom, they'll hedge a position. While they'll have a lot of money on their sells, a lot more than they would per se their buys, they'll hedge a buy up into this region where would they release their buy and then re-add short. So every scenario there points to a scenario if we come up to this level to be a heavy magnet of resistance to come right back down. That's the highest I think we're going to go. For me, 51.95 is that number. 5,500 could come into play. And does it have to happen? Absolutely not. I'll show you guys why. Take a look at the monthly chart. Best way to represent it. You guys saw all the traps being created. People, unless you bought low in any of these scenarios, you were caught either in drawdown instantly or consistently caught in drawdown. Monthly chart, close bearish, come out, close bearish just slightly, close bearish, come up, fail, close bearish, consistently sideways. In the last 6 months, we've closed bearish each time consistently, starting the month off bullish with one green candle that ends up being a wick and then being chopped right back down. So a lot of people are thinking about the ETF and all this news out there, all of the social media, people that want price to go up. I mean, we all want price to go up, right, to make money. But you have to keep in mind who runs the market. And with that, we have Tristan here, going to go ahead and go into that. Tristan, what do you think of Bitcoin as of its current value?
Yeah, so ultimately, I would have to say I would agree. I am looking for that 51 to 55 retest to very heavily short. Ultimately, that's because this is the price and efficiency that needs to be filled, like 51.82 I'm on BitMEX's chart, and then ultimately the breaker of this order block, which was pretty much the only consolidation on our wave down or expansion down from 6K at 55 is also a possibility, as you said. Something a lot of people don't realize, right, going to the weekly chart, once we came back up and tested the loss of this area around 16 to 17,000, Bitcoin became very, very bearish. And then ultimately, Bitcoin actually entered, in my opinion, a bear market upon the break of about 58 to 5,600, right? These lows here. The reason for this is in Wyckoff theory, there is something called a reaccumulation, redistribution, etc. And the maximum percentage for a reaccumulation is 70%. So if we were to take just our simple Fibonacci from our lows to our highs, right, and do that, you would get a roughly, we were sitting on the 70% for quite some time, right? So sitting on that 70% area for me was very important to see if we were able to hold that region, and if so, we would have potentially been able to see that this was just reaccumulation to make another mark up. Upon breaking that 70% region, that 70 retracement for reaccumulation and selling off of the order block here from November of 2017, which led to the high, the swing low that led to the high, are pretty much the only massive consolidation between that 5 to 20K region in that month of November, became extremely bearish, and ultimately led to the belief and led to my personal belief that this thing was going to run for 88% at a minimum. 88% if I were to go to an actual exchange. Actually, we'll just do it on here. But 88% is around 24 to 2,600. That's your market cycle retracement. And that also lies within the weekly block shown here between 3,000 and 1,900, with the 50% equilibrium of that block at 25 to 2400, lining up with our 88% retracement for a full market cycle retracement. So for me, that's a big area of interest. There's something detailed, fair market value. Fair market value is obviously at the 50% retracement because, or the equilibrium of a range or order block or whatever, because that is where institutions find they're able to purchase below or at that region for a discount on a swing high or on an expansion on a retrace if you were trying to long. So ultimately, we will see a reaction at that area. If we break that region, we would be looking for, more likely than not, the 1200 region, and that's not to scare anyone, it's just to point out the facts. For me, if we break, below this region of this block around 2300, which would be your discount, below the equilibrium around 24, if we don't hold those regions, it is pretty high probability, I'd say, very high probability that we head for, like I said, what brought us to this entire move. If you look, we do actually have to go to, let's go to Bitstamp. If you look at what brought us to the high here, right, this move here brought us to this high, and if we break that, this move down here, really, once we broke the old high here at 1180, 1200, is what led to the expansion to 20,000. So, once again, if we break the block here around 24, that's where I'd be looking, 11 to 1200, and ultimately just being prepared for it, right? I mean, this is an opportunity, if you view it like that, ultimately to potentially get into an asset for a very, very cheap discount comparison to a year ago or 18 months ago. And if you take advantage of that asset and like you said, aren't trapped, back in beginning of 2018, XC had mentioned, we were calling 11.8 short, right? And price never returned there. I was calling 10K short. I was calling 7,500, 7,400 short over here, right? So these were obviously just moves to retrace to head lower. And ultimately, we want to keep everyone safe in the market, give people an opportunity to make money in the market, and stride them away from this a minute for the tech FOMO bullcrap that's going to lose you money, because that's the epitome of a bubble. The markets are based on greater fool theory. There needs to be someone out there to purchase what you are trying to sell, or someone selling for what you're trying to purchase. I mean, that is how the market works, right? So that's literally why FOMO and FUD and all these terms that have become so normal in our vocabulary are important, because if, let's just say, we do talk about how the news is really just a reasoning for price, but it makes sense, right? If, let's just say, some bad news article comes out and retail's selling, usually that's in an accumulation most of the time, right? So ultimately, just keeping that in mind, staying safe in the market. We obviously provide updates all the time, but for to sit here and say 2019 is going to be the year of Bitcoin, just like everyone said 2018 was going to be the year of Bitcoin, is quite blasphemy, and it's ultimately going to lose you money.
Agreed, brother. It's really important to mention too, we want Bitcoin to go up as much as everybody, but we have to be realistic, right? I think what we're trying to do here for you guys is to give you guys that insight. We know what's out there. We know all the news articles that come out. We know Twitter. We know Reddit. We know TradingView with the one arrow to 34K. We know, what you guys are being fed, and it's pretty much garbage in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
The ETF. A traditional market cycle, what happens when price goes from the lows all the way to the highs, as seen here on Bitstamp, is price will come back down, potentially make a very massive wick. And with that wick, we'll sit sideways. All this talk of the ETF, you have to think about as well. If you go to the store and your dollar's worth 50 cents 1 week later, and then it's worth 70 cents 2 weeks later, and then it's worth 35, and the variations of price, to think that a regulatory asset will come into play with that in mind is crazy. Imagine if your dollar did that. I mean, it doesn't for a reason, right? So you have to keep in mind, logically wise, could price go much lower on Bitcoin? 100%. I mean, why couldn't it is the real question. Right. If there's not enough people that are going to buy, and everybody is making money selling, and we're at 20K, now we're at 3K, maybe we'll get a move up here. Nothing says that we have to. And for me, that's, like Tristan referenced, an optimal shorting entry. that price can go much lower. Why can't it? For me, I'm looking here. I don't know if this will come into play. This is a level. I don't know if we will come down here and hold per se, but this is very similar to the 5.8 level. As look from the left to the right, could we come down here and wick into it, make a big move, and then go sideways, maybe make another lower high, come back down? But as far as price goes in the future, for me, and this isn't to be negative or to be bearish, it's if price were to go down to $1,000, and you ask me right now, or you asked me 6 months ago, I would not be surprised whatsoever. I mean, you got to think about it in the grand scheme of things. There is a use case, of course, for Bitcoin, but it's a very thin line of the use case, right? I mean, payment system, you have PayPal. I mean, a major, we're going to break away from the banks. I mean, that clearly is not happening right now. And if it did, price would not be doing what it's currently doing. So up 20,000% from $100 on Coinbase. If you look at Brave New Coin, you go back one more year, prices in the dollar region. Could it go much lower than $1,000? Could it go much lower than $500? It's very possible, right? And for me, as long as people still believe in Bitcoin, that is going to give me a higher probability that we are going to go lower. And the second that nobody believes it, and you go to a blockchain conference and there's one guy there and he's actually the janitor and he's cleaning up the floors, he's mopping the floors, and you ask somebody about Bitcoin and they're like, we had to close this event, a month ago or something like that. That's when I want to be a buyer, because what more than likely happens in a market cycle retracement is price comes from the highs, comes back down, sits sideways for a long period of time. And a lot of people believe that 6K area to be that. But if you look relative from the lows of $100 to 20K up here, and the meat of the bone is all the way down here, that was the tell, just eyeballing it. And where are we at? Not much more in comparison to where the meat of the bone is. So if we come down here, bounce, so forth, and hold this region, this could be a major level of support over here. Maybe it's 1,200, maybe it's 1,300, maybe it's $1,000. It could all be one wick, and then they could trade above it. Maybe that will be the low. A lot of people are talking about much lower numbers than that. I can't say for certain if that's going to happen. I hear people saying $100, $50. I mean, could that happen? Absolutely. Am I prepared for that? Maybe if it's $1,300 or $1,800, maybe I'll start putting my limit orders down. But do I think we're going to go from 34 today, tomorrow, or at $100? There's no way that's in grasp right now.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind, right? Obviously, we're going to adapt to the market as it shows itself. This thing is, as you said, is not going to happen overnight. We're not going to wake up tomorrow morning and Bitcoin's not going to be at $100, right? Could it be at 2,400? Maybe. But will it be at 100? Absolutely not, because there's obviously a ton of order blocks and support that were built leading to the expansion high. We're just giving you, our thoughts on what to be prepared for. If the market shows itself differently and something else winds up pointing itself out, then we will take advantage of that as that occurs. But in the intermedium, we're not going to sit here and have this false mindset that moon Lambo boys, as it said, and all those guys that said up here that the bottom was in. If they're still in the market, they're still doing the same thing, and we've been the ones saying for quite some time. Besides, once I will admit, I think right around here that it was possible we were forming a bottom, but as soon as we invalidated the 5,800 area, so I was saying around, I think it was like maybe October. As soon as we invalidated that 5,800 level, that's when I switched my bias back. The reason I was thinking that is because the market does start to form a bottom in the form of a rounding bottom, and when that happens, ultimately that failed, right? So I switched my bias, and since then, and for pretty much the entirety of the year, been bearish. Looking at some of the memes out there about this being a bottom, the best one now is I think it's the moving average. That's like the 200 weekly moving average that everyone's talking about. Yeah.
It's the institutional benchmark.
Yeah. So this is the institutional benchmark, they say, right? Yeah, sure, it's respecting it, right? And I was going to say a little bit on this. People saying that this is going to be the bottom are the same people that, literally, I'm not going to waste my time, but I could go through EMAs and MAs. Oh, we got the 55 EMA, we got this EMA, we got this EMA, we got this MA, we got this bullshit, and ultimately, all those things failed. So this holds no value in my opinion. And the secondary reason of why that holds no value is when you're trying to come up with a hypothesis for price or hypothesis in an experiment, whatever, in the scientific method, right? You're looking for obviously data to support your claim, and experiments is how you come up with that, independent, dependent variables and all that. And ultimately, Bitcoin has one data point that supports this claim, that this is an quote-unquote institutional benchmark and will act as the institutional support and accumulation point for Bitcoin. So for me, that's not a valid reason to say a bottoms in, saying again that one data point validifies your theory. I mean, I can literally go to the DGI and talk about the 200 weekly moving average, and sure, it has some respect here. Like 2016, we came down to it, pretty much formed a double bottom off of it. But looking at the actual recessions, the actual market cycles that occurred, dot-com bubble, 2008 housing crisis, etc., did the 200 weekly moving average actually do anything? Absolutely not, right? Yeah, you had support in a positive trend off of it, right? Like seen here, for instance, 87, 91. When you're a positive trend, right, that continues to act as support. But when you actually have a full cycle retrace, a full retracement, a full recession, every single time it fails. Okay? Every single time. I'm literally pointing 6 in here and the last whatever. So just keeping that in mind, the mindset of this and that is the reason why, and this is going to be where the institutions, if you think that the banks, who are the real institutions, are sitting there and saying, all right, guys, we hit the 200 weekly moving average, time to buy our $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's just not how the market works, and you're chasing dreams if you think that's the case. So, yeah.
Well said, brother. And like I said, guys, we're only here to help. We know a lot of people have lost money throughout this market, and 3-4 months ago, people paid me and Tristan a lot of money just to sit for a couple of hours at a time just to analyze their portfolio, because they were caught in the shape shift when we were sitting in the 7, 8, 9, 10, 12K region. What should I do right now? Should I sell? Is price going to go lower? And I did the same thing that I'm doing now. As price is down 47%, I'm just letting you guys know that to have a plan, make sure you guys have a plan. Price is going to come down, up into this region. Will it per se go and break these lows, sweep these lows right away? We'll have to watch. It could come up. Like I said, that's definitely wouldn't surprise me. But understanding that versus the stock market, and then we have this market. The stock market is, money is being printed every single day. That this market is completely a little bit, well, it's rather a little bit different in that sense, right? There's nobody sitting here and pumping money into Bitcoin. And if it is, it's the exchanges, it's the market makers, and they're just doing that, to trap you, right? As referenced here, and here. The market runs off supply and demand. Where's demand on this chart? Let's find on the 3-month. It'll just, it'll just give you a little bit of perspective of where demand is sitting. Where are all of the orders on the charts into this region? Will it come down here? Who knows, right? I'm watching 19, 18 region. I'm also watching 24, 25 region. But after that, those are the two levels, and then it's a straight drop, at least down to $1,250, $1,300. So understanding that, like I said, here to give you guys free value. I hope you guys enjoyed this call. It's going to go against most of the people in the market. If you know somebody that's still trapped in the mindset of this is going to go to 34K and it's going to do that in 1 year or 2 years, it's just really not probable. I would say 90% to 95% probability wise that we won't even shift above 5.5. Best case scenario is we come up here and we wick into it, shorts fill. The people that got trapped into this region take a small loss in the comparison to a 50% loss that's current at present value, and then of course they could take over. I mean, there's definitely, the best way to think about it is like a rolling a snowball down a hill, right? The second they drop it from the top, the snowball keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets to the bottom and it smacks into a wall, and then it disintegrates into pieces, goes sideways, maybe makes a wick, and then maybe we'll see, could be years from now, this could be honestly a reference point for market cycles for the next 20 years, maybe for decades, 100 years. This could be referenced. if we come down to these levels, this will be one of the the highest percentage market cycle retracement I think that has been recorded, other than like a couple penny stocks that go to like $1 and come down to 2 cents. But as far as like a major asset, this might be the king of it. So keep that in mind. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, we wanted to do this free value for you. End of the day, we did not need to make this. If you guys watch our live streams, we cover it slightly, but I wanted to cover in full depth for you guys on this Saturday. Feel free to check out our Discord. Feel free to jump in. We always, always in there. You can join for free if you have any questions. Like I said, we're always available at the strike of a dime. Pretty much only time we're not available is between like 2 and 5 a.m. or something, 5 a.m. So hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll leave that with Tristan.
Yeah, last thing I want to say, I mean, obviously this is a market, we're traders, and the biggest thing that we need to keep in mind as traders, there's a difference between being a trader and an analyst, and there's also the important distinction that a trader reacts to the market, right? A trader is not sitting here just trying to give these massive predictions on price, and ultimately these are levels we're looking at, and these are, areas of interest for us for both investment, but also, just keeping the macro perspective in mind. But when we think and take into account that if this does invalidate and we do head up to 5, 6K and break that region, well, then we can switch our bias and look for reaction to that change in market sentiment and market structure. But keeping that in mind, that's how I want to end it and leave it moving forward. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, as I actually said, we have a Discord, links in the description. Make sure to tune in there. And yeah, without any further ado, we'll see you guys next time. As always, have a good one.